Okay. There we go.
So it's so what do? They made one standard for all the egg cases, right? So which is right, a lot of what we've been seeing going on here, right, is them standardizing at least different cases to all have one measurable.
It's become numbers.
Mm-hmm. So
and once it's become numbers, and Bates is, it's not just this case, which Bates is important, right? We refer to what other areas Bates is important? Joe.
what other areas is Bates important? You said?
Yeah.
In terms of like Isser Veheter?
Yeah.
Well, Birya is going to be an important.
Okay, so it
Davar
was
Shemimyan. Yeah.
What do we say, Lexi?
Davar Shemimyan, right?
Davar Shemimyan.
And presumably Alan was actually just asking about whether this idea of like sizes would apply to any kind of like relatively standard sized countable thing. And I'm assuming it would, right? Like if I had a Truma apple that fell into
now it does. Now it does. I don't know if before, as we talk about this progress, and I'm anti-progress. I wish we'd go back to Tom. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I can't stand in the way. We can't be a complete Luddite here. That's my name. Landy's the Luddite. Okay, that's where. I'm from Lutz, so.
But why?
That's what I mean.
Well, let me ask a question.
I am from Lutz. Okay, I'm sorry, go on.
Why do we not use our normal measurement of 60? Why don't we take 60 eggs, put them in a pot of water, see what the displacement is, and then take the largest, assuming we don't know which one is the right egg, take the largest egg of them and do its displacement and see if we have 60 against it. Why don't we just do our normal methodology of displacement? Lexi,
because we've changed. We've gone into, I hear, that's the proof. We've gone into numbers.
Yeah.
Well, Lexi, you want to say something?
Lexi and then Yavni, go for it.
Yeah, I mean, I think this gets like once we have codified the shishim, right? So we think that the shishim is kind of like an independently important number, but then we get into kind of this question of Davar Shemimyan, right? That like shishim is like a general thing that we're probably usually not measuring so precisely when it's like a stew, right? But when you have objectively countable, discrete things, it becomes a much more kind of like real concrete number. And suddenly we're like, yeah, like 60 of individual pieces versus like, 60 times the mass of this thing that is melted into my stew looks different, right? That 60 within an all, conglomerated mass looks the same regardless. 60 of individual pieces is not always going to look the same.
So why would that apply specifically to eggs and not to anything else, right? Like let's say you have zaytim.
Saying it would apply to other things that are like counted individual things.
Yeah, I mean, the question of volume as opposed to number is important. And I'm trying to think of a good example, but I don't know, a bunch of, I have one apple peel and a bunch of beans, right? The apple peel takes up a lot more space, but the beans are like, there are more of them. And so I can imagine a scenario in which this might come up.
So let me see if I can put what you're saying into my own words, which is maybe it's that once there is a concept of 60, so as long as we can fulfill that requirement in some way, then we fulfilled it. In other words, perhaps it's a rabbinic requirement. It's pretty much a rabbinic requirement, especially here. I mean, I don't even know if here is Yavesh b'Yavesh, in which case it'd really be belted. Well, but I guess it's this Tom here maybe, but
not Yavesh b'Yavesh because we're talking only about the plita.
Right, so there's Tom here, so it's not Yavesh b'Yavesh, but still, even so, 60 is still a rabbinic kind of din because it's institution of the rabbis. And once they've said 60, if we can fulfill it in some way, then so it's kind of a kula. Instead of having to do displacement, we can just count. But we are making it fun. Yeah.
I would even
go. In other words, the point is that once there's 60 in that out there, we can tell the balabatim, oh, there was 60 here. They'll be satisfied. It's true. It's not exactly the same 60 that we normally use, but it's a 60.
So I think you're also hitting, right, there's 2 points there is once 60 becomes standard, things that don't seem to work with 60, like we're like, well, when eggs are different sizes, you can't just assume like by number there. Then we also want a way to easily do it, but we're also really nervous that measurement is a specialty in some ways, right? Measuring volumes is hard. And the average person can turn to their non-Jewish neighbor and say, can you taste this, and find out if it's there. But the average person probably doesn't understand displacement theory well enough to like, even though we do have some stuff about it, I would guess maybe I'm being too low on the average person, but it's
we're coming up with an easier method.
Exactly.
And still giving attention or respect to the idea of 60.
Exactly. Yavni, I know we've been cutting you off here, so I want you to get.
But we're going away from 60, right? And I think what's going on is because we actually do want the displacement case, but we worry that if we teach people 1 in 60, and then they say, okay, it was only 1 egg, and I know I had 60 eggs, then they'll think it's fine. Whereas we're actually worried about the volume or mass or whatever.
So in other words, the extra 1 is kind of to remind people that really we should have been doing displacement.
Right.
And to
satisfy, to make sure that even if we had done displacement, we would be okay.
Right. And well, not necessarily to make sure, because it could still not be enough.
It could be twice. It could be
you need 1 1/4. Yeah. I mean, it could be 1 more is not really a scientific adjustment. But it sort of lets people reminds them that they really should be doing displacement.
I would summarize it. You have 3 things here. You got the OR standard, which is I don't want to say standard, the OR criterion, which is Tom. You have standard, which is Shishim, and then you have policy, which is 61. And that's where they are. And actually, I think it's really important in looking at a psak and considering psak, giving a psak, when you give psak, those are 3 things, like where it really is, what are we really talking about here? Are we really talking about a standard that we've imposed? We think standard, think of a OU guide, which is rife with hysteria, okay, but nonetheless, it's a guide. Are we talking about the real criterion, or are we talking about what we're going to do in terms of policy? Because we want people to eat each other's homes.
Yeah. So I'll eat in your home as long as you're measuring 61 eggs against the Isser egg. And
right.
But
my point is, we also want to think about the perception that we create in the householder, how he views the halacha. We want to give him, we want to maintain a certain respect for the halacha.
So
impact. Okay, very good.
But with that, we haven't looked at the Rambam has his own shita for this, by the way, which is who was reading? Was Ruben? Were you reading? Did I make that up?
Yeah, I was reading.
So keep going. We're back in the Prisha. Keep reading about Rambam.
והרמב"ם כתב בעצה שיש בתוכה אפרוח, הואיל והוא בריאה, הוסיפו אחד לבטל האיסור משום חומרה. ואין דרשה מן נפקא מינה בין הטעמים.
Which we will.
Basically, the Rambam just has a different explanation. It's like the only reason why you need 61 in case of eggs is because it's considered bria, and therefore, just and then we added 1 just to be mevatel isur.
Yeah, right. We'll get into Biria in a few weeks, right? Or Bria, if maybe that's how it's pronounced, but I always say Biria. But Biria is one of those things that's not batel. The egg itself is not batel because the egg with an efruach is its own kind of individual, I don't want to say living thing, but we'll get into what that means. And so therefore we were machmir about it in that case that you needed more to be batel the pleta as well as like kind of a heker of that this is a special case.
And the Rambam makes a lot more sense to me because per the Rush, we seems to be setting 2 different standards, right? There's one standard for the stew where you need shishim, but then as soon as it's recognizable and there's a chance that the Israel might be bigger than the rest, then it becomes 61 or more.
So say that one more time.
Well, per the Rush, it seems that as soon as you have things that are recognizable and when there's a chance that the Israel might be bigger than the rest, so let's think about apples, olives, whatever it is. So then you have a new measurement, which is 61. However, in the case of a stew, when you can't tell them apart, then it's 60. So then there's 2 different dinim at this point. There's just 2 that's 60, and then there's like things that are recognizable, that are 61.
Yeah. The Rambam is easier also, by the way, to stretch as to where would it apply and where doesn't it, right? The Rambam would say anything it's a birya, right? Maybe has this rule. If it's not a birya, it doesn't have this rule. You know, the Rosh is like, well, every time you have something Devar Sheminyan, what's going on? It's not so clear. So, but I want to look at the nafkamina for this. Alish, let's go in the same page. The Drisha Dalid Veserich Shishim Ve'achat Beitzim Shalater Kenegda.
Yes.
That's right. Just drop below. Can you read for us?
Yes, I can. I will start, but I have a question. Like I want to make an order in it. The case, is it the case? The case is min bemino, right? In spite of the fact that it's ektame.
Well, is the afroch min b'mino?
Yeah. No, not the afroch, the beitzat mea, like which we dealt with.
Yeah, no, I think here it's the beitzah afroch is not min b'mino.
No, not afroch, but the
beitzah turah, right? Well, here we're dealing with the afroch.
I know that's the Rambam. That's what the Rambam brought. But before the talk was about beitzat mea, right? Like
yeah, so that would be mean, right? Just if they're all the same kind of beitzah, it's
that will be min b'mino. So
yeah, but the problem is, right? Then they're all asur, or they're all different. Right?
No. What is really weird thing is that anyway we know that it would be like the Oraita, would be Barov, and that it's just the Rabbanan. There is this measure of 60. So this adding one more egg sounds really it sounds really weird. Well, whatever, just a comment. But another thing was we talk about Beitzah Klufa also, right? Like
yeah, if it's shelled or not, right?
So. How does it work if it's shelled?
Oh, the whole idea that
practically it's hard to imagine for me. Like, is it like it's a raw egg, which I like.
Oh, you like how is it cooked if it's shelled? Yeah,
it's I theoretically I understand, but I would like to see a chef course, like really showing me, because it seems that like all this stuff gets dispersed among the other eggs anyway.
You could poach all the eggs that are shelled right together. That's and then we still be separate. It's well, actually, no, with that, it's actually a great idea, but it doesn't have to be the eggs like that. It could be an omelet, because read the Drisha. So
okay, I'll read.
Wait, let me just stop just for a second. I want to address something that Alish said. Made a very good point, which is that in the Beit Yosef in Gimel, he says that eggs of one type and another type is min b'mino. So therefore, if we're talking about eggs with a tameh bird and a kosher bird, it's really min b'mino. And Alish was saying, so therefore our 60 is really a rabbinical din in any case. So it's just like truma, where they required 100, or orla they required 200. Here they required 61. But it's not a din Torah. We're not really worrying about mavataling tam. We're just trying to mekayem a din derabanan of 60.
Okay, I'll start the Drisha.
No, it's good. Yeah.
Okay. וצריך 61 ביצים של היתר כנגדה. טעם הראש והרמב"ם כתבתי בפרישה ונקרא ונפקא מינה ביניהן שלכל אחד יש כולה וחומרה. The time, so the reason of the Rosh and the Haramban, so I wrote it in the Prisha, and the Nafkamina between Rosh and the Rambam is everyone has a kula and a chumra. The imnit bashla betafshil, so it's bashla betafshil, leharosh en tzarich ela shishim, veleharambam tzarich 61. Hoil vehu birya. So because if it was cooked in the meal, so for Rosh only 60 is needed, and Rambam needs 61, because it's a distinct piece.
Yeah, in other words, right? Because of the Rosh, it's about making sure there's enough stuff there to mevatel the thing. Right. If you put in your cholent, right? There's 60, eggs in your cholent, 61 eggs in your cholent, and one of them is a beitzat tefroach. As long as you have the cholent there too, you're fine according to the way that the Prisha is understanding the Rosh, at least. But the Rambam would say no, the birya is the factor, and it's a gzera on that. So therefore, it doesn't matter if you're cooking it with something else or not.
ואות יש ביניהם אם נטרפה ביצה אסורה עם שאר ביצים, לדעת הראש צריך 61 לבטלה, ולדעת הרמב"ם אין צריך אלא, now I have to skip the
Shishim.
אלא 60, that's what I assume, but it's
Yeah.
but it's oh, that's too bad. Wait, it should be somewhere here. אין צריך אלא 60.
Should be the very bottom of the next page.
Yeah, I'm going there because I don't have. אין לה 60, דהואיל ונטרפה, שוב אין שם ביריה.
אין שם ביריה עליה.
אין שם ביריה עליה. Okay. So the other thing was that, I'll skip here, that if you like whatever, crack the egg or scramble it, you mix it, like eggs. Scramble, right? Yeah. Like scramble the eggs. And it gets mixed with the rest of the beitzim ksherot. So according to Rosh, so you need 61 in order to make it batel, and for the Rambam, you need only 60 because it's not birya anymore, because it's not a distinct piece of egg anymore.
Exactly. We'll get into this when we get into birya, right? But that removes the birya status of it.
Right. It's just a mixture. ועוד יש חילוק שאין בה אפרוח ודם, אלא ביצת עוף טמא או של טרפה, דלא שייך בה ביריה, להרמב"ם. אין צריך נגדו 61, ולראש צריך כשהיא כלופה. כשהיא כלופה. Okay. So what was it? And the other difference between them is this: if there is a froach and bird and blood.
If there's not, right? It's not.
If there's not, but it's just beitzat of tameh, it's impure beitza. Or trefa, or the non-kosher.
The beitza comes from a trefa bird, right?
Right, on the non-kosher bird, because then there is the category of birya doesn't apply there according to the Rambam. So we don't need 61, but according to Rosh, we need 61 if it's like peeled egg. How do you call it?
Peeled is the word. I keep saying shelled, but yeah, peeled egg. Right.
Okay.
Well, I'll stop. We're going to stop there with that, right? So this is right. Just generally, right? If it's a beitzat tefroch is a birya, a beitzat tameh is not a birya, and therefore for the Rambam, who thinks it's all about birya, that wouldn't apply. Right. So just generally to summarize all of this, right? The debate between the Rosh and the Rambam, the Rosh says it's about some eggs are bigger than others, and so we put a standardization. The Rambam says it's because an egg is a birya, and the Drisha brought several different cases where they have differences between the two of them on that. So, but the general, I think the takeaway from both of them in some ways is that the standard of 1 in 61 for an egg is something that only applies in a somewhat narrow set of cases, right? It's almost as like you feel they want to keep most cases at 60, and they're like, what one case is going to have 1 in 61, right? So at least that's how I'm feeling about it. I don't know if that's 100% accurate, but good. Actually, I want to jump. We can do thoughts and questions in a minute. I want to go back to Shulchan Aruch in this place. I want to look at one shach tweeted. Actually, you know what? We don't even need to do it now. Because we've actually covered this piece. It's a short shach. So let's. I think maybe it's a good time to take a break, and we'll come back and we'll look at chet and tet in the Shulchan Aruch. So. Want to grab from all different places here. So maybe we're in the Shulchan Aruch on Tzadi Chet and Yoreh Tzadi Chet Seif Chet, and here I'm really it's the Haggah in many ways that I think is a really interesting part, but everything is interesting, of course. So maybe Alana, do you want to read for us?
Sure. Okay. חל מתבטל ב-90 ו-50, ב-9 ו-50, הגה, כל האיסורים הנוהגים בזמן הזה, כולם מתבטלים בשישים, מלבד חמץ בפסח ויהי נסך כאשר נתבאר בהלכותיהם, ובלבד שהאיסור אינו נותן טעם בקדרה, אבל אם נותן טעם באותה קדרה, והוא אסור מצד עצמו, אפילו באלף לא בטיל, כל זמן שמרגישים טעמו, ולכן מלח ותבלין מדבריהם, מדברים דאבידי לטמא, אם אסורים מחמת עצמן, אינן בטלים בשישים. Okay, so the klal, you need 59 neged the klal, which is like what we said that the klal eino min haminyan, and we saw in the Gemara.
Min haminyan, rather, right?
Oh, klal min haminyan, right? It's part of the minyan, right. So you need 59 besides it. And then the Rama says that all of the isurim in our day, you need shishim in order to nullify them, with the exception of some things that have their own dinim, which are, I think we said b'mashu for chametz b'pesach, right? Like even just the slightest bit, no good. And yenesech, and right, same thing. And this is only if the isur doesn't give taste. Which I think this is what Rav Landis was saying about, you know, the relationship between shishim and tam. Like if there's, it sounds like the Rama is saying if there's tam, then we don't even think about, like we can't matir with shishim. You can only allow for shishim when there's no issue of tam in the pot. But if the isur is giving taste, and I don't know what who asur mitzad atzmo.
Good. Yeah. In other words, I don't remember if we'll see something on this. It itself is an isur as opposed to it's boleh isur, right? If it's like pepper that absorbs pork juice is different than just pepper, which was orla pepper essentially.
I got it. Okay, so if it itself is the isur, then it's never batel. So long as the tam is nikar, as long as you can sense the taste, you know. And that's why things like salt and spices that are, the whole purpose is to give taste. Then they're if they're asur, you know, in their own right, and as opposed to something like you said that was, you know, absorbed in isur of some other kind. But if it itself is the isur, then there's no bitul b'shishim for things like that.
Exactly. So I think this Rama is, you know, at least, you know, is really important in that he's on one hand kind of leveling everything, right? He's following up the whole thing of Kechal is one of 59. He's like, no, everything today is 60 with these two exceptions, right? Pesach, which is its own thing, and Yain Nesach, which is its own thing. But at the same time, don't forget the main principle, right? The main principle is tam. And so at the end of the day, if it gives tam, that's a problem. So
it sounds like she's saying that the Rama is saying that shishim is not just a way of measuring tam, is not a way of measuring tam. Shishim is a leniency that we can resort to if there's no tam. But if there's tam, don't think you can batel something in shishim, right? Like tam is fundamental here.
Exactly. I think it's, by the way, it's both, it's a leniency and it's also that we want to avoid, and it's a chumrah at the same time, right? It's like everything we don't measure tam in general, as long as we know that there's no tam, we go by 60, right? But if we
it's a standard, because go one way or the other, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
But if we do know there's tam, then you can't just say like, oh well, there's 60 against this orla pepper I put in my soup. No, you're going to taste the pepper. You need to avoid that. That soup is asur. So, but
just a quick question. So isn't the assumption that in most food, tam is gone after shishim? Because that's the way I understood it.
That's what we seem to be seeing. That's the way I understood the Gemara is going that way. Except there are exceptions, right? We saw that it was Rabbi Abahu and Rabbi Abba. Was that who it was? Right? He's like, well, if you're going to make sure that there's never tam, you should never have anything batel. And he's like, no, come on. The isurim that are out there, right, are generally no stronger than an onion, which is 1 in 60.
Right, except in specific cases of piltel, where like the taste is never batel, and therefore like could never be materiate, I guess.
Exactly, and therefore it's come back here, right? It's that's never a batel case. So good. I want to take a look. Yeah, so you're right. So Lexi, it's a good point. Orla is actually 1 in 200, and I don't remember if I was planning on doing this or not. I'll have to look, but if you look at the Tours version of this, he includes all the other cases that are exceptions, and the Ramah has like just has gotten rid of them, and it's a big question as to why he does that. So he does say, right, which will be a thing, is what's noheg in bisman hazeh, and Orla is still noheg even bechutz la'aretz bisman hazeh. So, but with that, actually, I want to step through a little bit of the shach before we, and then we'll probably go back to a Beit Yosef. But I want to start with shach kaf vav, kol ha'isurim, and maybe let's see, Jacob, do you want to read?
What do you want me to read again?
In the shach sif katan kaf vav.
Okay, let me get there. Okay. Kol ha'isurim chuled, Pirush ben shel Torah ben shel Devrehem.
Ken katav.
Ken katav haTorah v'Rashba. De loka Rambam. Shesov de isurim shel Devrehem mitbatlim b'chamishim v'tisha kmo chal. B'chatav Beit Yosef nira dat kol poskim ke'Rashba v'chein pashut b'kama duchte. So it's explained whether it's from the Torah, whether it's from the Rabbanim. That's the Torah and the Rashba, right? And that's not like the Rambam, since he holds that if it's an Isser Shel Rabbanon, they're invalidated with 59, like Chal. And Beit Yosef writes that it appears that all the post-game hold like the Rashba, and it's explained in many places.
Exactly, right. So there's a big distinction between the Rambam and the Rashba. We paskin like the Rashba here, but just to know that the Rambam is sitting out there where he thinks that there actually is a difference, versus we have here made everything 1 in 60. It doesn't matter what the level of Isur was or what kind of Isur it was. Everything's 1 in 60.
So wait, according to the Shach, what does kol mean, and what does it not mean?
As opposed to, I think he means it. I think he thinks it includes kechal in this opinion. So.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. But I was thinking the category of kol we were talking about an hour ago. How can it be a kol? It's not a kol. So which kol is it actually, according to the Shach?
It's everything. I mean, it's
not all foods. It's all isurim.
So,
in other words, it's not all foods because we have pepper, but it's all isurim, rabbanan or deraita. And in that sense, it's true.
Well, I mean, he's quoting the Rama and the Rama goes on to say, like, except for flavor. So I think kol could still just be everything, because then that exception comes in, like what the word kol means.
Yeah, it is interesting to see, like,
Perush, but look what he writes. Perush, the perush of what? Of kol isurim. The Dibur Matcha is kol isurim. What does it mean, kol isurim? Perush, bein b'Torah, bein shel Devrei. Whether it's the right to Rabbanan. That doesn't necessarily mean all substances. It means all types of isurs.
So that would include eggs as well, right? Sorry, I'm just not going back there. But
well, I mean, again, I don't want to get too involved in this because maybe it's not really call even there, but but I'm just saying. That's what he's saying.
So
that's what doesn't include eggs, because in the Sif before that we said eggs are 61. Kol Yisuri is him saying most Yisuri.
I mean,
it's still not really call. I agree.
Yeah,
it's still not really call, but the point is, you could he's interpreting the word call to mean whether it's rabbinic or right.
So I didn't, by the way, I didn't look to see if anyone says, I doubt anyone says this, but I think there is a way to read the Ramah there as being on both on Zayin and Chet, and trying to argue Bicholek on the Shulchan Aruch in both places. I haven't seen anybody who says that. So, but yeah, I mean, blanket 60 at this point, and that's where we are. But I want to keep going. Let's see, we're gonna how are we doing on time? Let's skip Kaf Zayin is the one where he gets into the whole question of why he left out Orla. It's a really interesting shach. Hopefully everyone read it. But just for the sake of time, I think it's probably less. I mean, Orla is still an applicable thing, but it's less halachically something we're going to run into. So I want to go to the shach Kaf Chet. Aval im noten tam be'ota kedera v'chule. And so let's see. Who should read? Yavni, you haven't read yet. Kaf Chet, please.
אבל אם נתן טעם בקדרה, כולי, ולכן כולי. כלומר, דכל האיסורים דעלמא דלא כלומר, דכל האיסורים דעלמא דלא אבידי לטעמה, מן הסתם בטלים בשישים, לפי שאין נותנים טעם ביותר משישים. אלא אם כן נרגש טעמו, דאז פשיטא דאסור. וכמו שכתב הראש והרשב"א והר"ן, ומביאם בית יוסף בראש סימן זה, וכן שאר פוסקים, והוא פשוט.
Good, stop there for a second.
So when it is explaining the Rama is saying that the reason why we say 60 is because things that don't give that aren't made, spices aren't made to be strong in flavor. In general, they are, that you won't taste them once there's 60 against them. And therefore, but if you do feel the taste, then it is a so.
Great, right? And this is right.
The key
Go ahead,
word here
Rav.
is min hastam b'teilim.
Yeah, good. So,
Key
also
word
I think
here is min hastam b'teilim. In other words, we assume that it's batel, but it's not a guarantee.
So I also think that it's important when he says Decholim de Alma, right? The general case of Isurim, right, is that they're not made for Tom, right? What are they? They're food, right? They're not, most Isurim out there are not spices, they're not things, right? Food is, of course, maybe mixed flavors of food to enhance flavors, but it's ochel at the end of the day. And therefore, ochel is not made to overpower everything else that's in there. And therefore, we can assume, minastam, that it is batel. But, all right. And he's got, he says, lots of people bring this. So, lachen, what happens? What's the upshot of this? Keep going.
כיוון דאם מרגישים טעמו אינו בטל, אפילו ביותר מ-60, הלקח, מלח ותבלין כולי אינם בטלים אפילו באלף, לפי שמן הסתם נותנים טעם, אפילו באלף, כיוון שנעשים ליתן טעם. So therefore, because what we're really talking about is flavor, things that are made to have strong flavor, like salt and spices, they aren't betelim even in 1,000 because minastam they would give flavor even in more than 1,000. Daha, yeah.
Can I jump in for a second? A relevant halacha is that certain kashrut organizations don't rely on shishim because they say if they put this thing in there, just like we just read. If they put this tiny ingredient in there, it must be for a reason. They don't just throw in things for no reason. So even if it's 1 in 100 of this ingredient and it's not a kosher ingredient, it was put in there for a reason. So it's mistama, it does give taste. That's what the shach just said now. That if it's a tavlin and you put it in for taste, then it's not batel because that's why it's there.
So I have an issue with that reasoning because you could put something in a food for purposes that are not flavor. For example, if you put something in that doesn't impart flavor but preserves it, makes it shelf stable, then
Davar hamamid also is going to be a problem. We're not doing
right.
That today.
So then you're getting into the question of Davar hamamid, or there's a third category. Maybe it's neither taste nor Davar hamamid, but it's maybe
so you still can't have it.
No. I'm saying I agree with you, Isaac. It could be that a preservative might not. I don't know what the definition of Davar hamamid is necessarily. I don't know if a preservative is Davar hamamid. We lost Isaac. Oh no, there you are.
No, I'm here.
Yeah. I lost somebody. Anyway, Yeah,
I
so
have another,
Generally saying it has to perform an essential kind of structural function to the thing. For example, the like fish bit that just turns beer clear isn't considered Devar Hama'amid because it's not necessary for it to be beer. Whereas something that makes ice cream have structural integrity is Devar Hama'amid.
right, so it depends, right? So, but there is a discussion. Rav Moshe talks about flavor, about color. What about color? Kind of relating to what you said, Lexi, about fish. If it changes the color, that could also be nikar, and then it's not batel, even though you don't taste it. I'm just
And I
saying
think-
the logical reasoning here that the Shach is using is if you put it there, it's for a reason, and therefore that could apply to other cases. That's all I'm saying.
well,
I mean,
the Shach here, sorry. Go ahead.
It's okay. I just wanted to jump in and say, I think what's one part of the things that's going on here is what's batel, things that you accidentally dropped in that really don't make a difference to the thing, right? It's like it was an accident, as opposed to things that actually change the substance. That's not batel, even if it was done accidentally, right?
Well,
Once it.
So I have a problem with this logic in the Shach because all of Devar Hama'amid, etc. Like I accept that those are all real things, but I'm not sure that that's what's actually being discussed here because he really has an emphasis on ta'am, right? So I feel like you could say like it's a problem for these other reasons, but not on the instance of ta'am. And I have an issue with the category of salt plus spices, because spices, if you add like a thing of coriander, like obviously it's supposed to taste like coriander, but salt can be used for two reasons. One is to bring other flavors out. It's not a flavor in of itself, but the second is to pickle things. And I mean, pickling is like cooking, but that doesn't mean that the salt itself is creating the flavor, right? We don't say fire creates flavor. We say that fire transfers flavor, right? So then the issue is really like, what have you cut it with? What a vessel is it in, etc. So like salt feels like either it shouldn't be in this category or there should be two distinctions on like how you're using the salt and therefore how you understand salt to transfer or not transfer treif. Also, I just want to say, like, what the heck is treif salt?
So, well, I mean, Vodazara salt or something like that, but
Vodazara
salt. In fairness, I don't know. I didn't see anybody who said this, but if you remember what were the Gemara's two examples of things that give flavor?
Pilpulin.
Yeah, pilpulin and tavlin, right? The Gemara didn't pick up salt. Right. As far as I recall, maybe it does somewhere else. So it is interesting that the salt has made its way into it's in the Ramah too, right?
Right. I
Salt,
mean, the Shach is saying if you margish the time, he's not talking about your motivation 100%. He says, margishim tamo eino batel. If you taste it, then it's not batel.
I think what Isaac's saying, Isaac, tell me if you're wrong, is that sometimes you're not actually tasting the salt, you're tasting the flavor the salt is drawn out, right?
Exactly. Like I think it's very common for people to not realize something is very salty because, like, for example, all of our processed foods have tons of salt, but most of them we don't say, oh, that's super salty, because what it's doing is not making it, quote, taste salty. What it's doing is making it taste like all the other stuff.
You might be able to claim ein margishin, right? That we're not tasting salt at that point. And so, but good. Sarich I want to push on a little bit. It's a great point. And I want Yavni to continue a little bit just in the shach here.
דהא דמילתא דאביד לטעמא אינו בטל. היינו נמי מטעם שמסתמא הוא נותן טעם אפילו באלף. כדמוכח מדברי ספר התרומה הוא שהביאו הטור ובית יוסף סוף סימן ק"ה, ולפי זה היכא ידוע בבירור שאינו נותן טעם, כגון שנפל קורת אחת של מלח או תבלין ליורה גדולה מותר. So that's sort of picking up what Isaac is saying, that like, well, actually, like, still what we care about is taste. So therefore, like, the fact that we're saying it's not batel be'elef is if you know that it doesn't give flavor, it's still okay.
Exactly. In other words, right, he puts a really good point on this. Just because it's a very, it's a flavor enhancing thing, like a spice. If you drop a little bit, and you know that you would never be able to taste it, then it is batel, right? It goes both ways. It's not like you just assume, even though min hastam, right? It would not be batel. If you know for sure that this is not the stam case, it is batel, just in the same way that if you have something that min hastam should be batel, but you know that it gave flavor because you taste it, that's asur. It goes both ways according to the shach in that sense. I think that's really important. So
are we
okay.
saying that in the case of melach v'tavlinim, you don't need 60? Like the whole, so long as you know for a fact that you can't taste it, like the whole rule of 60 is at the window as well?
If you know for sure you can't taste it, like if you know, well,
No.
in other words, you know ahead of time you
No,
can't.
you still need
Yeah.
60. It's just saying that it can be batel, as opposed to like afilu be'elef lo batel.
He's just modifying his stricture. His stricture was that if you put salt in it or spices in it, it's going to not be batel for any amount because you put it in for a reason. And then he's saying, but if it fell in by accident, you didn't put it in, so then we're not going to say it could be batel be'elef. He's not saying it could be batel in 50.
No.
Unlikely it's not going to be batel in 50, but it could be batel in elef because there you didn't put it in for flavor and maybe you don't taste it.
No, it seems to be saying that even if you put it on purpose, so long as you can't taste it, so then you could be battle it. You could battle it.
Well, that's
And
a
it's
general
battle
rule, except
b'shishim
we
and not
require
out of
60.
1,000.
We don't rely on taste.
Talking about doing it on purpose or by accident here.
No,
Yes,
he's not.
this is nafal.
Yeah, it fell by accident. He's talking about, but I think in these cases, it's not coming anywhere close to 60. He's like, you drop a piece of salt in a huge yoreh, right? You know that salt 1 in 60 does give flavor. This isn't even close to that, right? This is way beyond. It's like 1 in 300, let's say, or something like that, or 1 in 400. We're talking.
He's
about.
not permitting salt in 50.
Yeah, no. Yeah. So, but good. I want to move on to the next shach, which I think is also really important, which is the question of, so what level of Isur is this going on here? Ruben, since you spoke up, why don't you read Kaftet for us? So.
Of course, אפילו בלף ובתיר, וכתב באיסור בהיתר ארוך כלל כ"ה, דהיינו מדי רבנן, that's דרבנן, וכתב עוד שם בסוף הכלל, דאם אינו ידוע אם מרגישים טעם או לא, מתיר בקחי גבנה,
באור זרוע.
באור זרוע, גם עתה להאכילו לעובד כוכבים.
משיח לפי תומו.
משיח לפי תומו, כן.
Good. Explain.
Okay, so he's saying that that's derabanan. That's not batal afil belaflo batil. So midoraita would be batil before. The rabbanan were more machmir and say afil belaflo batil. And he adds the im eino yadua im margishin tamol. So if there's a case where he doesn't know whether there's a taste of the Isra or not, matir bekagavna borzerwa gamata lachilo levad kochavi. Okay, so basically he's saying that in the case where you're actually not sure whether you can taste it or not, you don't necessarily assume that it's not batil be'elef. You just ask a goy to try it out. And if you can't try it, if you can taste it, so then it's a mutar. If not, it's asur.
Exactly, right? So this is a case where even though nowadays we no longer give it to non-Jews to taste, we can do it in this case for the cases of spices or things that give flavor. So, but why
does he say it's Rabbanan? Why does he say it's Rabbanan?
Great. The Pri Megadim takes him on this and doesn't agree at all.
If you taste it, let's explain my question. Because if you taste it, that's the whole adin. The din is if you taste it, it's usher. And we're talking about if you're margishim.
I think we could go back to Isaac's points that like melach is not a taste in itself; it's just a flavor enhancing.
No, you hear what Lexi said? Lexi said.
Oh, I didn't hear that.
So
Lexi said because.
I need to hand it to you. I've got a kid. I'll be back hopefully in a minute, but
okay.
I'm gonna hand off to you.
Where did you want to go?
What was that?
Where do you want to go next?
I want to go to, let's do the next shach, and then we're gonna go to Tet from there. So.
Okay. So, well, how come he says it's Rabbanan? If you're margishim the tam, all the time we're talking about tam being usher. That's a din d'oraita, needing 60 to mevatel tam. And here you don't have, you have 60, but you still taste the flavor. It should be usher d'oraita, just like it was when you didn't have 60. If you didn't have 60, it was usher d'oraita. Now is a case where you do have 60, but you feel the flavor. It should be usher d'oraita. So why does he say it's usher d'Rabbanan? So Lexi answer says, because he's holding, at least this, the Reheter is holding that Tam ki ikar is derabanan. Even though we saw that the Beis Yosef himself says we paskin at least the chumrah that it's also deraita. So it's a little bit weird, but even so, Lexi, why is the Shach telling us this? It's kind of irrelevant whether it's there, but like, why are we being told that? I mean, is he a way out opinion? Is there a ruach a way out opinion?
It's not right? It's like a reason to allow a certain kula, like for example, allowing a goy to taste it, even though we don't generally rely on that nowadays. Also, I think Aaron had something.
But if that would be the reason, then even if you had less than 6, even if you had something that wasn't a spice and you didn't have 60, you should also, it's also Rabbanan. And then you should also let a goy taste it.
I think maybe back to what Rav Landy said at the beginning, I don't know if this was at the beginning of Shir, about an hour ago, where when you could say that the thing, if it's above 60, the thing you're tasting, if there's a little bit of a taste, is not really a taste. And so we're just like, I'm not really sure I tasted something. Durabanan, I'm gonna be l'chumra and say like that counts as a taste. But doraita, that's not when I said the Torah said that doraita, I didn't mean like the thing you taste above 1/60th. That's not a taste.
And as you're saying that, like, once you have 60, you kind of took care of the deraita issue, and now anything beyond that is the Rabbanan. That's kind of weird, but okay. I mean, it's kind of weird because the whole 60 is a rabbinic law, really, and the real ikar law is ta'ima, is tasting. But okay, I find it surprising.
Treating the 60 lot as we give it tremendous chashivas, right?
Yeah, it seems like it's almost like a deraita law, and anything beyond that,
we keep on forgetting. We keep on forgetting that it's not correct. But you're right. I mean, right.
I think you have to either say that he's actually making 60 into a deraita, which we did see we saw Tam Ki Kar deraita. It's not necessarily 1 in 60, but he's seeing it as 1 in 60 is a deraita limit to some extent, right? Or things that are giving flavor aren't actually ochel is the other thought I had. And because they're not actually ochel, that really the Torah only is oser ochel at the end of the day. And that it's only derabanan that things that are not actually ochel, but are flavor giving things that are asur, right? Which is different than Tam Ki Kar deraita. That
who says this?
This is a guess that I had as to what was going on here. Yeah. So as I
said, that would make sense because the Rama later on says that melach v'tavlin is derabanan.
It explains
Rav Nachum,
go ahead, Ruben.
Oh no, I'm just saying it makes sense because the Rama says in the line after that, "V'lachin melach v'tavlin midivrem," that the melach v'tavlin are actually considered derabanan, and I think it makes sense based on what Joel is saying.
Yeah, that's not midivrem. That's
midvarim
from the thing.
My bad, I read it wrong. Sorry. It would have been pretty convenient though, to be honest.
It would have, yes. So
or more challenging to the side that says to what we're trying to argue.
But that's my best take that I could come up with is just it's not ochel at the end of the day, right? Nobody eats salt by itself. So
you have a good point because like you don't take truma on salt and even on spices you don't take truma because they're not food.
Spices, but
what
you take on some spices, I think it depends.
It depends on what. Yeah, it's like mint in tea. It's like something where you eat the actual substance of it. Then I think you do. I don't know. That's a topic for another day. But yeah, spices you don't necessarily take truma.
All right, where did we get to? Do we?
We didn't get anywhere. You're
Good. Sorry about that interruption. Gedalia is also in isolation with me right now. And he woke up from his nap. Let's jump to just we have 20 minutes. Let's jump to Tet in the Shulchan Aruch, and then maybe come back and do a little bit of Nosei Kelim on it as well. So let's see. Anybody not? I'm sure someone hasn't read, and I skipped somebody, so I apologize. Maybe someone want to volunteer who hasn't read.
I can read.
Rav Nachum wants to read Tet. Amazing. So
okay, but just don't make fun of it if I make a mistake. Kedera sheyesh ba 59 zeitim heter v'naflu ba 2 zeitim. echad shel dam ve'echad shel chelev, kol echad mitzaref im ה-59 shel heter levatel chavero. So you have a pot that has 59 of heter, and you have simultaneously two different categories of isser fall in. So from the perspective of each isser, there's 60 against it, because there's 60 against for what was it, dam and chelev. So the dam has 60 against it because it has chelev and 59 heter, and the chelev has 60 against it because it has dam and 59 heter. In other words, what's happening is that the dam is batel because there's 60 things that are not dam to batel it, and the chelev is batel because there's 60 things that are not chelev to mevatel it. You can take this to the absurd points, but yeah. And I think the expression actually to remember, what I remember is, I think he's going to say this in one of the commentaries, is mali heter mevatel isser, mali isser mevatel isser. Now, what do I care if it's heter mevateling the isser or another isser mevateling the isser? Either way, it's batel. The can is Rabbi Joel, you want to say something?
No, I think, it's interesting because I think this is, falling back to the Tom model to some extent also, right? Is that the Tom of Dam is helping to, is another force against the Tom of Chelev. The Tom of Chelev is another force against the Tom of Dam, right? To today. So Tom is still sitting in the background of all of this.
Definitely. וכן 29 זיתים של התר שנפל בהן כזית חלב. So now you have 29 heter and one kazayit of chelev. Uba kadera acheret, and another kadera, hayu shloshim shel heter, v'nafal letocho kazayit dam. So now you actually v'nit arvu b'shogeg mutar. So because when they ritarvu, what do you actually have? You have 30 and 29 is 59, and you have the same case, 59 and 2 zaytim. But it happened in stages. And because it happened in stages, you might say, well, at the first stage, when it was 30, when it was 29 and 1, it was not batel. So maybe the whole thing is asur. And the 30 and 1 is also asur. So when they mix together, it's just isser and isser, it's all asur. So it's a big chiddush to say, no, if it's all happened b'shogeg, if it mixed together b'shogeg, it becomes it's mutar. And then what do you want to say? Now you have to get into another topic, which is noda hatarovot. But Joel, you're on mute. You're on mute.
But explain, just explain that. Why does that happen?
Well, you might say it's asur because it's all asur, but
each
one became
that.
asur. Why is it not asur? Because I'm just going to throw this out. Maybe there's another explanation that we can come up with. But one explanation is because lo no da tarov. In other words, I don't know that this occurred. It happened, and as long as my knowledge didn't interfere and say and pronounce these 30 are asur and these 31 are asur, as long as I didn't make that pronouncement, and then it again fell into something else, and then I'm asked what the halacha is. So it never became asur at the middle stage.
You can also just say
I will help you.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Wait,
Yeah.
Lexi. Wait, first Lexi, and then
Lexi, just read the Taz, Dalit, and then Rav Landis after that. So
the Taz says "V'nitarev b'shogeg mutar," and also I forget. Isn't there someone who comments on why it's weird that the Ramah doesn't push back on this? But anyway,
yes,
yeah. Right, this whole idea that you could have these separate mixtures where when mixed will have 59 heter and then 2 different things of isser, and it would be batel is only if you don't believe Hanan applies to things besides basar v'chalav. אבל הדידן וקיימלן בסימן צדי ב' ובכל היסורים אמרינן חתיכה עצמה נעשית נבלה, גם זה התערובת אסור. וכבר נעשה נבלה קודם התערובת. So the Taz says, if you believe Chanan applies to things besides Basar B'chalav, this rule is not applicable because it would in fact, like both of those things would have become Asur. And so they can't then be Batel. I think there's somebody else who explains that it could potentially like be an area of like Lach Balach, where like there are a lot of people who say that like in Lach Balach, even the Ashkenazim don't think Chanan applies. So in that scenario, it could be fine.
But my answer is best.
It is a lo nodabin time because it hasn't become
yes, because that's actually the Ramah's opinion in other places. We're going to learn this in other simanim. The Ramah is a very big flag bearer of the idea of no da terovit and not no da terovit, and whether and how your knowledge of the mixture could affect when it becomes asur. So therefore, he could agree with this, even though he holds Chanan b'shar Isurim. He could agree with this based on what my explanation.
Yeah, can I just restate? I just want to state all these things. Oh, sorry, Rav Landis, you wanted to go, and then I'll restate all these things.
Yeah, yeah. There's a greater tolerance. I'm agreeing. There's a greater tolerance for messiness, and so that's correct. The criterion that the Nachum is saying, as long as your das doesn't get in the way, is true. That we don't expect, when we're pouring things out of a pot, everything comes out exactly at the same time. Everything, and therefore the das is the only thing gets. And where do we have a halacha like that? Just as an example, you're in an airplane and it's partially dark, and you're making a minyan. And it feels like there's a minyan there. What don't you do? Don't count.
Count, yeah.
See if there's 10 people. Halacha is, as long as it feels like 10, it's 10 until you count, and now you only have 9. Go take your seat, because you only have 9. Okay,
but there you have a plane.
in agreement. There's a tolerance for messiness.
Yeah, but actually, I think that fits really well too, right? Because all of this has been about cases that kind of deviate slightly from the boundaries, and this one also seems to deviate slightly from the boundaries we've set in this sense, and that either it's, and just to kind of because I think some of these are things that are new concepts or concepts we've just begun to see. Chanan, right? The idea is that once you have an Isur that falls into a heter, that whole thing is Isur, right? And not just that it's Asur because there's Isur in it, right? That's my distinction. The whole thing becomes Isur as opposed to just it's a heter with Isur in it that is therefore Asur. And there's a machloket that we're going to see more of this when we get to Basar B'chalav. Actually, we'll see it also in Tarovot, that according to the Mechaber, Hanan only applies to milk and meat and not to other Isurim. And it's an opinion of the Tosfos of Rabbeinu Ephraim. Someone can correct me, I can't remember right now. And the Ramah doesn't hold that. He holds that there is Hanan and Shar Isurim, but as Rav Nachum pointed out, the Ramah at the same time, and Rav Lexi also pointed this out, has a lot of places where the mixture has happened, but it hasn't been recognized, or it's a particular kind of mixture, so it hasn't yet turned into Hanan. Right, it hasn't happened quite yet.
Can I suggest?
Please,
Can I suggest that we look at the Shach Lamed Daled, pretty much smack in the middle, where he says V'yesh Lomar.
Great. V'yesh Lomar de Stam Hadvarim.
Yeah, everyone finds that. It says Yesh Lomar de Stam Hadvarim. I think he asks kind of our question. Sorry, and he says.
Sorry, where are you guys at?
Good.
What? It's in the Shach Lamed Daled. Sort of in the smack in the middle, it says V'yesh Lomar. It's a Yud Lamed, like a Yud quotation mark Lamed. V'yesh Lomar de Stam Devarim. Everyone has that? Oh, wait a minute. Jacob, you have it? Ilana, yeah, not yet. You have it? Raphael? Okay. V'yesh Lomar de Stam Devarim. No, Stam Devarim the Inyan Lach Balach, V'lo Amrinan Chanan, Behefsid Meruba. That's what Lexi was saying. Maybe it's Lach Balach and a Hefsid Meruba and then in such a case we don't say Hanan, and that's why we could le'el Siman Sadi Bet, like we say over in Siman Sadi Bet. In other words, there's a special, like a special din that in Lach Balach and Hanan, we don't say that. We don't say Hanan if it's Lach Balach and it's also Hefsid Meruba. And maybe that's the case that he's thinking of here. Siman Sadi Bet Sif Dal. V'ken katuv b'haga'ah b'siman Sadi Tet. Sif, that's what we're going to learn. Sadi Tet 99. We'll learn that next couple of weeks. Sif Hey. Vayan le'el. Deharav Azil. Now here, this is the part that I really want. Deharav Azil l'taimei. The Rav, which means the Ramah, is going according to his own psak. Shepsak b'Torah Chatat, ve'hevetiv l'kaman b'Siman Sadi Tet, which is brought in Siman 99, which is our next Siman, Sif Kat and Tet Vav. In other words, hevetiv, I brought it. In other words, look in Shach Tet Vav. De'im nit vasef al ha'isser b'shogeg. So this is talking about where an isser falls in, and then nitfasef b'shogeg al ha'isser kodem shenodat terovet lo amrinan chanan. In other words, if more heter falls in before you discover that the isser fell in, then we don't say, but wait a second, I just realized that the isser, when it fell in, there was only 59. And now that there's 63, doesn't help me because when it fell in originally, it was 59. Says, the Ramah says, no, but if you didn't know, if you were not aware that this happened until later, lo amrin chanan, we don't say chanan. Ve'en tzarich ela shishim neged ha'isser. You only need 60 against the original isser. Ve'im kain ma'iri hacha shnit harev, and therefore we can say in our case also the same thing. Shnei kederot yachad kodem shenodat harovet. It all happened before. So that's an explanation. So that's the explanation I was giving.
Okay, but then the Shach immediately says why he doesn't like that explanation.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't bother me with the details.
So
I read what I wanted to read.
But that explanation, by the way, is also in Pre-Shal Lamed Aleph, so hopefully some people recognized it. But it's yeah.
No, he's not saying he doesn't like it. What I think what he's going on to say, I just glanced at it. What he's going on to say is that we don't agree with the Ramah on this point. But that's not the point. The point is, why didn't the Ramah object to this halach? That's the question that we're starting with. Why did the Ramah say, but we who hold Hanan don't hold like this? And the answer is because he agrees with this halach, because of this reason. Now, we personally don't agree with the Ramah, maybe about his noda, about this issue of noda. But that's an open question. I wouldn't say that we necessarily agree with the Shach either. I personally tend to like the Ramah, The Ramah makes sense.
Kind of a big deal, So,
yeah, Ramah's a pretty big deal.
But
I don't think you have. I don't think in general in Psak that you have to go against the Ramah when the Shach the Tazag argues on.
We don't, but we often do.
If the Shach goes, we usually will go with the Shach if the Shach goes against the Ramah, right? But it's still open there on the shelf of the posek it's in his toolbox. In other words, both opinions are still there.
But I would say, anytime you have a giant like the Ramah or, coming in to say something, it's something that you can't just erase or, pretend doesn't exist. So it can be very useful. Rev Landis, you look like you want to say something.
No, I agree with what you're saying. I would just add also the fact that the Ramah makes widespread, all the time is making widespread alterations. He's not doing little diyukim. He's doing widespread. But our minhag is going to be this way, or we're not going to accept, or we do accept. That gives rise to someone, it gives rise to machlokes. And therefore,
but I think this is also a learning moment because, in other words, it's nice to see that the Ramah can be understood as a consistent to himself. In other words, what we're going to see in 99, we're seeing also in 98, in Siman 98 here. And that's nice to see that kind of consistency, and it's a healthy way to explain the Ramah.
Yeah.
Good.
But with that, we're actually not done. We actually didn't read the Ramah on Sadi Chet at the very Seif Tet here, which he doesn't push back on that point, but he does actually have a point. So I don't know. I'll finish it up. Why not? V'chol sheken. The chol sheken here is actually really amazing or important. I think b'shtei zeitim echad shel gvina v'echad shel basar. Right. So if you have, right, if you look in the Taz, just to give us a sense of like a case here in Tent Vav, he says Pirushin afluli arkot b'ktera. Right. So you have, right, you know, 2 vegetable dishes going on, and all right, there can be one. And you have at the same time you have, you know, an olive worth of cheese, an olive worth of basar that fall into that pot, right? And so now you have 59 olives of vegetables, 1 of meat, 1 of milk, and actually there nonetheless the 59 vegetables plus the milk is mevatel the meat, you know, and vice versa, and because each of them themselves, by the way, the kol sheken is on its own a heter, right? Vegetables and milk and vegetables and meat are heterim at the end of the day. So it's really just a you know, a drop of milk that falls into a meat pot or vice versa situation.
Yeah, I mean they're heterim and they're mutter. You know,
Exactly.
You
Yeah.
say both. Yeah.
So,
Which is also why, like, even for everyone who holds Chanan B'Shar Yisraelim, it's not an issue, right? Because Chanan only applies when you have an Isser in less than Shishim. But we don't say that when you have like a kazayit of milk with 29 zaytim of parav, it's not suddenly 30 zaytim of milk, right? It's just a kazayit of milk.
Right.
Yeah, this also actually comes back to last week with the whole thing. Like if I have a new spoon and I put it in because I ate of milk, right? There's no question of anyone ever saying the whole spoon becomes an isser because milk is an asur, right? At the end of the day. So if I then put it in a meat pot, right, then I only have to worry about the kazayit of milk. I don't have to worry about the whole spoon that I put in. And it's because, you know, and I actually remember Rav Lexi, if I can name you here, I remember you making that a very strong point 2 years ago when we taught this topic. And it will always stick with me. So I appreciate that.
Which point is that?
Is that milk on its own?
Repeat it.
Yeah, milk on its own or meat on its own is mutar, right? And so therefore nothing can become, you know, all meat, you know, Hanan meat or Hanan milk, because there's no isser, right? There's no nevelah going on there yet until it mixes.
In other words, the pot with 1 zayit of milk in it and 29 zaytim of vegetables doesn't get a din of anything.
Exactly.
It's still just a mixture of 1 and 29. It didn't get any pronouncement on it.
Exactly. It's just a mixture of something you can eat at the end of the day, you know.
Yeah,
and
it still retains its ratios, right?
Mm-hmm. But it's 30 zaytim of something that you can eat, you know. So
I mean, there's a whole nother question which you didn't talk about, which is I think some people don't like why does the Ramah say 29 and not why does it just
that's in the Prisha. I think he just says it's lav dafka is his explanation. It's just
so what's the question? Well, tell us.
No, it is dafka, right? Because it's as opposed to there's like a typo or a girsa of like the Rosh or whatever, or maybe of the Torah quoting the Rosh where he says shloshim and shloshim, and then there's not the same nafkamina because this is within the seif about how like Isser can ola Isser, right? And if there's in total 60 zaytim of heter, that's not relevant.
Right.
So it's dafka 29. So dafka the girsa, the version that we are seeing 29 and 30 is the ideal version. You're saying?
Yes.
Because you need 61 total and 60 of them being against the other one. Yeah.
And where is the version?
I think he didn't want to get into chatzi shiur.
Fair enough.
That's okay. I don't think he wanted to get into a chatzi shiur. And by saying 29, it's not even a chatzi shiur.
Yeah, it's in the tour, right? Where he says 30 and 30. Is that right? Did I make that up? It's I think it's in the tour. If we look
tour and then the Beit Yosef comments on it.
Yeah.
So he corrects it here.
Yeah, the Ramah or the Shulchan Aruch correct. The Chaber corrects it here. Yes. So, but yeah. It's in, if you look, actually, if everyone looks at we'll do this the last minute. If you go to in Sarichet, to the tour in Tet, he says, וכן 30 זיתים של היתר שנפל בהן כזית דם, ו30 זיתים אחרים של היתר שנפל בהן כזית חלב. ונתערבו אלו התערבות בשוגג מותרים, right? So he's got 30-30 there. And here the Machaber changes to 30-29, which makes more sense. So, but okay. I'm going to close here. It's 4 o'clock. So Bruchim to you. But Ad Kan Sarichet, but we'll come back to it.
All right, next week is Sarichet. Myself and Lexi and myself, we're going to do it in the next 2 weeks. We're going to do Aleph through Daled for sure, if anything is for sure, next week. I have a feeling we may be giving Hay as well. So I'll send out to you what I think Aleph through Daled takes up, but you may take a look at Hay. And yes, again, Joe, thank you, Reb Nachum. Thank you all.
Everybody. Great
Everybody.
learning. Laila
Kol
Tov.
Tov.
You.